Hi there, this is Steve Kaufman, and I'm doing this video in response to a question raised on my blog, the Linguist on Language blogs, by one of my regular readers who calls himself Kaufmanist Nutball, but has had various names in the past. I appreciate his comments. He tends to be sometimes a little aggressive in making his points, but we all have our styles. But he makes the point that the fact that I was born in Sweden and my parents were from Czechoslovakia and spoke German and Czech at home, which I heard, that even though when we moved to Canada, we spoke English at home, and I did forget my Swedish. Montreal is also French speaking, although I lived very much in an English speaking enclave and I didn't really have much contact with French, but all of these things helped me. And so therefore, if I can speak now 10 or 11 languages, that I was very fortunate to have those conditions, and therefore I'm not a good example of language learning in general. He also mentions the case of Susanna from LA, the lady who wrote the book about languages music. I'm going to admit I don't remember her last name, so I don't want to mispronounce it. Very delightful lady. We spoke in an interview that I put up on my blog. I'm hoping to do a video interview with her, someone who was born in the Soviet Union, emigrated to the US at the age of 3, has lived in Argentina, and is very fluent in 7 languages. So the point here is that people who have that kind of exposure to different languages in childhood have a big advantage. Therefore, then the question to me is, therefore what? I mention in my book, and I always mention, that I did have that background as a child, and that I think it probably helped me. I think it helps people to be exposed to languages in their childhood. It makes their brains more flexible. I am sure that that is true. However, I work very hard at languages, much harder than anybody I know. Now, maybe the fact that I have success with languages encourages me to work hard. However, I also know people, many people, who are unilingual, raised unilingually, and become very good speakers of 2, 3, 4, or more other languages. So it's undoubtedly, and I should add, I know people who grew up in a multilingual environment and who do not become good language learners. I know friends that I went to school with who were in a similar situation, who had emigrated from Europe at a similar age and who essentially did not become good language learners. A lot of, for example, Quebecois grow up hearing English and French, and they have 2 languages. And my experience in the Foreign Service was that they were not necessarily better at learning Chinese or Japanese than English Canadians who had been raised unilingually. I see examples here in Vancouver of kids who come here, immigrants, say from China. Kids are born here. They end up in ESL at school because they don't speak English well enough to be in a class with the other kids. Although, to my mind, a lot of the ESL is quite unnecessary, but they have trouble with English. And they also don't have an advantage in learning 3rd languages. So, it's another one of these things that, in theory, it's an advantage, but it's not a condition. It doesn't guarantee success, and the fact that you haven't had that opportunity doesn't prevent you from having success. Ultimately, language learning success depends on motivation. And so a very motivated person, regardless of their language background in childhood, will be successful in language learning. It's like a number of other conditions that, in theory, are advantages, but which are not conditions for success. For example, people say, well, if you go to the country, then you'll become fluent. I have met, if I think of the people that I know, say in China or Japan, or people that I speak to via Skype here at Link, who are Russian or Japanese or Spanish, and if I compare their English to the English of many immigrants, I would almost say the average Japanese, Chinese, Russian immigrant that I encounter here in Canada. The people that I got to know in China, Japan, or talking via Skype spoke English better than the immigrants here. Now, I'm not saying that all people in Japan, China, Russia speak better, but I'm saying that those people in those countries who have never set foot in an English-speaking country, but who are very motivated to learn, they end up speaking better than the average immigrant here. So the point again is that while it's an advantage to be in the country where the language is spoken, it's not a condition. It doesn't guarantee you success, and not being there doesn't prevent success, because ultimately it boils down to motivation. Now, the other question is, well, my approach to language learning, which is based on a lot of input, reading and listening and vocabulary growth, is that something that only works for someone with my, background as a child? Here again, I don't think so. I always say the main thing in language learning is to do what you like to do. But I think no matter what our background is, we do have to get the language in us. And the question of when we start to speak and how much emphasis we should put on grammar will depend on the individual. It'll also depend on the opportunity. And, with Russian, I'm not going to change my social and professional life around so that I spend the day with Russian speakers. As Susanna suggested, I find a Russian to go grocery shopping with. I'm not about to do that. So therefore, I'm stuck with a lot of listening and reading. If I were in Russia, yeah, I'd be speaking every day with anyone that I could inflict myself upon. So, yeah, in summary then, I think the fact that I had, from a language learner's perspective, an advantageous background as a child has undoubtedly, I believe it has helped me a lot to be successful, to speak 11 languages. It has has fueled my motivation. But it's not a condition. I don't think it changes the question of what is an effective way to learn. I don't think it means that people who haven't had that opportunity cannot learn, because I know too many examples of people who have been very successful. I think of Da Shan in China, who is a very popular figure. Countless people that I've worked with, Canadians who have gone to Japan, English Canadians, people in my office, in the lumber business, but who went there as students or to teach English and who have come back speaking fluent Japanese. And they were successful because they were motivated, because they liked the people, the language, they got immersed in it. So, in summary, yeah, it has helped me. Kaufman is nutball, but it's not a condition, and I don't think it invalidates my approach to language learning. So, I look forward to more comments. Thank you.